Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to thank the Secretary General for his comprehensive briefing, as well as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ms. Pillay, for her perceptive remarks, and the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mr. Holmes, for his insightful comments. We wish him all the best in his next endeavors. Lebanon also expresses its support to the informal group of experts on the protection of civilians. Its diligent work, coupled with that of OCHA, has been instrumental in reporting the realities on the ground. Madam President, civilians continue to account for the majority of casualties in armed conflicts, even over a decade after the adoption of Resolution 1265. Thus, the prospects of building safe, peaceful, and prosperous societies are eroded as children hope for the future is shattered. Women and girls continue to be subjected to endemic sexual and gender-based violence, and able men are killed or injured. Tolerating impunity for the armed targeting of civilians only encourages perpetrators in their heinous practices. Lebanon supports the establishment of standing mechanisms for the timely creation of independent fact-finding commissions in the immediate aftermath of hostilities. This would improve the Council's ability to fairly assess the realities on the ground and to take appropriate action against those parties undermining international law and international humanitarian law. Madam President, the use of cluster munitions as a means of indiscriminate attacks against civilians is particularly lethal, since its risks to civilians endure long after the conflict has ended. The Lebanese armed forces, assisted by the international community, are still working on clearing vast areas from the 4 million cluster bombs Israel dropped in the last 48 hours of the war it waged in 2006. Hundreds of civilians, a large proportion of which are children, are still dying or losing limbs 4 years on as a result of unexploded munitions. Lebanon reiterates its demand that Israel pay due compensation for the Lebanese children and farmers harmed by cluster munitions, in addition to the fishermen and others affected by the oil spill caused by Israeli bombing of the GE power plant in 2006. Madam President, standing by idle as human rights and international humanitarian law are violated and civilian access to aid is consistently impeded means abandoning them twice. The people of Gaza, whose hospitals and schools have been repeatedly bombed by the Israeli army, should be allowed to access, without waiting endless hours at checkpoints, the humanitarian aid that would cater to their basic human needs. Moreover, the blockade of Gaza should be lifted immediately and without conditions. The protection of civilians should also tackle the root causes hampering enduring peace and security, in addition to dealing with imminent physical threats. While Lebanon commends the work of UNRWA and OCHA in Gaza, the fact remains that without lifting the siege and allowing the people of Gaza to experience sustainable and sustained economic development, their basic human rights to freedom from want and need will continue to be threatened. Lebanon also expresses its appreciation for the quick impact projects carried out by UNIFIL and that have made an important difference in the lives of our citizens. While there is no doubt that civilians in armed conflicts are forced into vulnerable situations, it must be acknowledged that refugee and internally displaced persons are generally in even more precarious conditions. It is imperative that the international community exerts a concerted effort to ensure the return of refugees and IDPs to safe and secure homes. The Security Council has both the political responsibility and moral duty toward defenseless civilians in situations of armed conflict, as well as toward the humanitarian aid workers and journalists who risk their lives to help these vulnerable populations and to report on their plight. We owe it to them all to endow our peacekeeping operations with the indispensable resources to carry out their mandate and to embolden them with the necessary political will. Thank you, Madam President.